Pimax has been making VR headsets since 2015, but I've never had the chance to try one for myself. That was the case until about 2 months ago when Pimax sent me an email offering to send me their latest headset, the Pimax Crystal. Clearly, I said yes, and I've been using this headset for about a month and a half now. So consider this my review of the Pimax Crystal. Like my review of the Quest 3, I'm going to keep this video simple. I'm going to tell you what I liked about this headset, and then I'm going to tell you what I didn't like, and then we'll make our conclusions. And as always, I'm going to be completely honest with my thoughts, because this headset offers quite a lot of features: high FOV, high resolution, eye tracking, standalone, and more. So my expectations were high. And just to be clear, this video is not sponsored by anyone, and the Crystal is being sent back to Pimax as soon as I'm done with this review. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. So let's talk about the positives first, and what I consider to be the main selling point of this headset, which is the lenses and the displays. When I put this headset on for the first time and started up Half-Life Alyx, I was impressed. Pretty much your whole FOV is crystal clear, hence the name, I guess. The Crystal has 2880 by 2880 pixels per eye, so when looking through the lenses, you can't see any pixels at all. I actually tried to go back to the Valve Index after using the Crystal for a while, and I'm not going to lie to you guys. Once you've used a headset with this high level of resolution, it becomes so hard to go back to something like the Index because it makes it look like a smudged mess in comparison. The Crystal's displays also have something called local dimming, which is meant to make it so you get true blacks like an OLED display. And it does work, but it's not perfect. In the center of your vision, you do get close to true blacks, but then at the edges, you sort of get this blooming effect, where there's still light coming through from those LEDs. Now, is this better than a normal LED without local dimming? Yes, absolutely. But is it as good as, say, a micro OLED panel would be with true blacks? No, it's not. It lands somewhere in between the two. Also, the Crystal has eye tracking, which I've never actually used until now, and I can confirm it works well. This would be useful in games that have dynamic foveated rendering, which will allow you to get more FPS in-game. But the thing is, not a lot of games implement this very well right now. But in games that have it, it does make a big difference. So it's almost like the Pimax is future-proofing itself for when dynamic foveated rendering becomes more common. And it's actually because of this eye tracking that you get another really cool feature. When you put on the Crystal, a window pops up in your view and tells you to adjust the headset up or down to get your eyes in the right position. Then the headset automatically adjusts the position of the lenses to your correct IPD. What this means is that every time you put this headset on, you will find the sweet spot, and that's an amazing quality of life feature. Then let's talk about the headset's tracking, which as far as I could tell works really well. The headset uses inside-out tracking, and I've had no problems with it while I've been using it. Then another positive that I found with this headset, which I wasn't expecting, was the microphone quality. I was really surprised with how good the quality of the microphone is, and you'll have no problems chatting to your friends in-game or using this thing for streaming. I'll play a comparison for you right now between the Pimax Crystal and the Valve Index microphones, without me having edited the audio at all. Hello, this is what my voice sounds like when recorded with the Valve Index microphone. Hello, this is what my voice sounds like when recorded with the Pimax Crystal microphone. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. Now let's talk about the things that I didn't like so much, and let's address the elephant in the room with this thing, which is that it is massive. And it's not so much the size that's my issue actually, it's more the thing that comes along with it, which is its weight. If we compare the Crystal to the Valve Index, which already weighs 800 odd grams, it's just huge. I actually decided to weigh both the Crystal and my Valve Index, and I found that the thing weighed over a kilogram. So yeah, this thing is heavy. And it was because of this weight that I found myself not being able to play with the Crystal for as long as other headsets before I got tired. I tend to play a lot of shooter games, which requires a lot more movement with your head. So when you have something that weighs a kilogram on the front of your face, it does tire you faster. And I am sure that if I kept using the headset, my body would eventually adjust to having that extra weight, but it is still something to consider. And with this Crystal's increased size, I was expecting to be blown away by the FOV, with their website saying it has 125 degrees horizontal. But honestly, I was left a bit disappointed when I put the headset on. I did some testing and found that for me, the Crystal's horizontal FOV was about 104 degrees, which in all honesty is not actually that bad. In fact, I'd say it's quite good, but it's not quite the 125 that they advertise on the website. So I decided to do the same test with my Valve Index and my Quest 3 so we could compare. And I actually found that the Crystal sits right in between the Valve Index and the Quest 3, with the Valve Index having the highest FOV. But it's important to note that this test is going to be very specific to me because everyone's face shape is different, and the closer your eyes get to the lenses, the wider your FOV will be, so I'd advise going and looking at some other people's videos to see what FOV they got. That way you can get a ballpark of what the FOV is. Now let's move on and talk a little bit about setting up a Pimax headset, because before receiving this headset, I had heard that Pimaxes can be quite finicky and difficult to set up. And now after setting up my own Crystal on my computer, I can say there is some truth to that, but it's not as bad as the internet made it seem. To get the Crystal working with my computer, it took me roughly 1.5 hours, and that was because it just wouldn't show up in the Pimax software when I connected it to my computer. Then when I finally got the Crystal showing up in the Pimax software, it came up with another error saying that there were too many monitors plugged into my computer. So I had to unplug one, which was a bit annoying, but then once I did that, it was working. Another thing that I found frustrating with the software is that I tend to turn my computers off at night. And when I turn the PC back on and turn on the Pimax software, it would prompt me to do the room setup again, even though I'd already done it. And I did some research, and some people said online that you could just ignore this and it would still work. So I tried that, and it did work, except it would make me really short in game. So at least in my experience with this software, I had to do the room setup every time, otherwise I'd be about this tall. Another thing that I actually had an issue with was the audio. This headset does actually come with speakers already installed on the side, but when I started up Half-Life Alyx for the first time, I noticed that there was a ton of latency. We're talking about like 1 to 2 seconds of latency. There is actually a 3.5mm jack on the bottom right hand corner of the headset, but when I plugged my headphones into that and tried it, I found that they had the same audio delay. In the software, there is actually a low latency audio mode option that you can toggle, but when I tried using that, it seemed to lower the sound quality quite a bit. So what I ended up doing was using this USB-C adapter and plugging my headphones into the USB at the front bottom end of the Crystal, which, while looking kind of funny, fixed the issues for me. Let's talk a bit more now about the Crystal's microphone, which, like I said earlier, sounds great. But I noticed something when I was recording which won't affect the majority of people, but it's still something I think I should mention. When I make my videos, I like to record my microphone audio and my gameplay audio separately so I have more control when I do my editing. But I noticed that if I did, say, an hour-long recording and I synced the audio at the beginning of the gameplay, if I then let it play out to the end of the hour-long session, the audio would be about 1 to 2 seconds out of sync again.
9 o'clock at night, so we're going quite literally that way.
So I sent an email to my contact at Pimax, and they said that the technical team are aware of this issue and they're looking to try and fix it. So this may not actually be an issue in the future. And again, I need to make this perfectly clear that this is only an issue if you want to record the microphone separately. And if you use the Crystal's microphone normally, say in game chat or in a live stream, you will not have any syncing issues at all. But like I said at the beginning of this video, I want to be as honest as possible. And I think it is an important point to make in case anyone does want to record content with the Crystal. Because believe me, there is nothing more annoying than going to edit your video and having to constantly deal with the audio going out of sync. Now, remember when I said that the Crystal's headset tracking was good? Well, the controllers are a bit of a different story. First of all, the controller's design is a little bit dated with the large tracking ring, and it does feel a bit plasticky. It definitely reminds me of the Quest 2 controllers. But I found that the tracking with the controllers specifically leaves a little bit to be desired. I found this to be the case in shooter games particularly, especially when you have something like a pistol and you go to hold it with 2 hands, you end up kind of overlapping your controllers like this, and it caused the tracking to go really weird. And it was happening so frequently that I actually thought there was something wrong with my aim and not the controllers. So I actually put back on the Valve Index just so I could double check that it wasn't me having bad aim, and yeah, it was definitely the controllers causing the issue. And then to kind of bring the whole thing together, because the headset itself is quite bulky and the controller for this day and age is quite bulky, when I went to aim down sights in shooter games, I found myself hitting the headset with the tracking ring, which, you know, is not the best for immersion, is it, really? And the final thing I want to mention is that the Crystal can actually be used as a standalone device, but when I went into like the dashboard of the standalone mode, if you want to call it that, it just seems so like half-baked that I just turned it off instantly. And to be honest, if you're buying a Pimax headset, you're buying it to be used with PC VR. You're not buying it because it has a standalone mode. And with that, we have now gone through all of the pros and all of the cons that I found with the Pimax Crystal. So would I recommend that you go out and pick up one of these things for yourself? Well, I'd actually say that it depends on what you're going to use this headset for. Let me explain. For the first 3 weeks of me using the Crystal, I was unsure of whether I liked it or not. And I think the reason for that was because I was using it to play first-person shooters like Half-Life Alyx, Into the Radius, and Contractors Showdown. Because those are the types of games that I would normally find myself playing. But then I decided to play some simulation games, and that's where the Crystal sort of clicked, and it started to make a lot more sense to me. When you play a simulation game, you're sitting in a chair, so you're not moving around as much, and you're mainly looking forwards. You're not going to be moving around with your head so much. So that means you're not going to strain your neck as much, and you're going to be able to play the game for longer. And let me tell you, when you're playing a flight sim game and you've got this headset on, because of the resolution, the high resolution, and the clarity of the lenses, you can look out towards the horizon and use your eyes, not your head, to look down at the dash with all of the readings and instruments and be able to read them with them not being pixelated and it being really clear, and that is really awesome. Plus, if you're using it for sim games, you don't even need the controllers, so the whole thing about bashing your head is not an issue. And I think this is the way to use this headset. I had so much fun playing the racing games and the flying games using this thing. So for me, looking at this headset from a general perspective, it's a bit of a mixed bag, because there are some things that the Crystal does really well and others that it doesn't. And it feels like when designing this thing that they wanted it to do everything. They wanted the high FOV, the good clarity, the auto IPD, the eye tracking, the standalone, it all had to be in this one device. And because of that, it kind of feels like a jack of all trades, master of one or two things, and then the rest are kind of eh. For example, the auto IPD adjustment is an amazing quality of life feature, which every time you put on the headset, it saves you time. But that time I just saved with the auto IPD adjustment is lost, because every time I turn on my PC, I have to do the room setup. And because it has all of these features well executed or not, it's not a cheap piece of hardware. If you get the version of this headset that I've been using in this video with the controllers and the speakers, it will set you back about £1,500, including tax. What I'd really love to see from Pimax is a headset that chooses to focus on a few of the features that the Crystal has and absolutely nail them. Maybe like a headset that is solely designed for simulation players in mind. So one that would have high FOV, high clarity, eye tracking for foveated rendering, nail those three features and package it in a smaller package so it weighs less. Don't bother with the standalone stuff, just make it a PC VR headset. So let's wrap up things with this Pimax Crystal. For me personally, as someone that plays FPS games mainly and streams for multiple hours in a row without stopping, the headset's size and weight and the loose tracking controllers overcomes the positives of the clarity and the resolution. Having said that, if you're someone that loves simulation games and wants nothing more than high clarity, high resolution, with good FOV around that of the Index or the Quest 3, then I really think you should consider the Pimax Crystal as your headset of choice. Especially since you can actually buy a simulator edition of the Pimax Crystal, which just comes with the headset itself without the controllers. And honestly, if I wasn't sending this thing back to Pimax, it would be the headset that I'd use for sim games. I want to say a big thank you to Pimax for sending me this headset for review, and if you'd like to check it out for yourself, there will be links in the description of this video that will send you to the Pimax website or to Amazon. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys!